Okay.
We should say hello to our folks at home as well, because we have a growing at-home audience.
Yeah, this will end up on a YouTube channel, and so you can always go look at it, whatever. So
why don't you just briefly reintroduce?
So we have Bruce, who's not only a Buddhist who practiced. Bruce has achieved enlightenment, so he knows what true reality is and loss of self, which he'll go into when we get into this. And
his twin brother, who's on the other side, was a colleague of Bart's. That they worked together for many years. He was a recognized and ordained monk, Buddhist monk, and a physicist.
Yeah, so he did observations in the microcosm down to the nucleus of the atom, or even down to the quantization of space. And he did observations out into the far reaches of space, thousands of light years away.
Wow.
And so forth.
And they did these thought experiments together. I don't know how else to put it. For a few years, with Bart as the mathematician, kind of keep.
Well, I was trying to see, the problem with this is if you go look into the microcosm, which many enlightened people have done over the millennia, okay, and this is all documented in the third book of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. You can go look this up. This was written down 2,000 years ago, but it's orally thousands of years older. You can look into the microcosm if you go into deep meditation. And but in doing this, you need a structure you have a framework. So you go looking around, and you see this and you see that, and you go, that's nice. Wonder what that is. I wonder, the notion of an atom and having a nucleus and electrons running around it. That's like, what are you talking about? I mean, I saw this thing go flashing by and it was an electron. So that's what we did, was we provided some structure using modern physics. So it's really just wrapping words around these observations to give it a framework for you to make sense. And you can see all this on the AlephTalks.com website. Aleph is the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and talks is talk. So it's a play on TED Talks, if you're familiar with that. So with that, we'll start off here. We're going to do a little segue on the Buddha. Can everybody see this?
Yep.
Okay, so we're dealing here with free inquiry. Do you want to run through this or not?
Me? You're asking me? Well, we agreed that we were going to. Don't you think we should?
Yeah, go ahead.
You want me to read it?
Yeah.
That's hard. Well, let's just back up a little bit. The Charter of Free Inquiry, the Buddha's timeless toolkit for critical thinking and combating dogmatism. 2 millennia before Carl Sagan penned his famous baloney detection kit for critical thinking, another sage of the ages laid out a similar set of criteria for sound logical reasoning to help navigate the ideological maze of truth, falsehood, and dogma-driven manipulation. Siddhartha Gautama, better known as the Buddha, formulated his tenets of critical thinking in response to a question by a tribal clan called the Kalama, the inhabitants of the small village of Kesaputta, which he passed while traveling across eastern India. And we should just say that this comes from this wonderful journal that we've discovered called The Marginalian. And it's incredibly synchronistic. Every week we find something really relevant.
I'm sorry, guys.
this week was
Did you hear that awful sound, or was it just us?
What sound?
You
Right.
dropped out.
There
That's
was
all I
like this,
knew.
and then boom, it went black. I'm like, what was that? Sorry.
Sorry.
We're back.
the powers that be don't like what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that was weird.
We heard kind of a thud. It was like a mic drop, but it wasn't anything.
But no, I don't know. There was just an awful sound, and we lost you. So we're back. Okay.
Okay.
Great.
This is on the marginalia, okay?
Marginalian.
Marginalian dot org. You can look this up, but it's dealing with the Buddha and how to. Let me just go back up here since you dropped off. It's the Buddha's toolkit for critical thinking and combating dogmatism. And so they talk about Carl Sagan, who had a baloney detection kit. And so 2 millennia before this, though, the Buddha came up with a similar, just equally powerful thing. So here we go. This is for the Kalamas.
That was kind of Mel Brooks's sounding, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Is that the one in Kyoto? The Buddha in Kyoto, Japan?
I don't know. We'd have to look up the credit to see. There's,
I think I've seen this one. It's beautiful.
There's a squatting person and there's a standing person to show you the scale of it.
Huge.
Beautiful.
So the Kalamas, the story goes, we just got to notice that our connection is unstable, blocking my view. The story goes, ask the Buddha how they could discern whom to trust among the countless wandering holy men passing through their land and seeking to convert them to various, often conflicting preachings. His answer, delivered as a sermon known today as the Kalama Sutta, or the Buddha's Charter of Free Inquiry, discourages blind faith, encourages a continual critical assessment of all claims, and outlines a cognitive toolkit for defying dogmatism. Included in this is what's her name?
Maria
Yeah.
Popova.
Popova's rave review. Included in the altogether fantastic Sit Down and Shut Up punk rock commentaries on Buddha, God, truth, sex, death, and Dogen's treasury of the right Dharma I. It reads as follows. Do not go upon what has been acquired by repeated hearing, nor upon tradition, nor upon rumor, nor upon what is in a scripture, nor upon surmise, nor upon an axiom, nor upon specious reasoning, nor upon a bias towards a notion that has been pondered over, nor upon another's seeming ability, nor upon the consideration the monk is our teacher. But when you yourselves know these things are good, these things are not blamable, these things are praised by the wise, undertaken and observed, these things lead to benefit and happiness, enter on and abide in them. But the most heartening part of the Buddha's sutta is that implicit to it is a timeless measure of integrity. It is the mark of the noble and secure intellect to encourage questioning even of his own convictions. The Buddha was, after all, just one of the holy men passing through the Kalama's land, and he was urging them to apply these very principles in assessing his own teachings. She says, compliment on Galileo on critical thinking and the folly of believing our preconceptions. Michael Faraday on how to cure our propensity for self-deception. Maria Koknova on why even the most rational of us are susceptible to deception. then revisit the great Buddhist teacher D.T. Suzuki on what freedom really means, and the 1919 Manifesto, Declaration of the Independence of the Mind. Well, I like that title. Do you want to go to any of these links?
We could see where go back to the Carl Sagan link, see what he said. His baloney detection kit.
Love
I think Mel Brooks would heartily approve.
that.
Carl Sagan was many things: a cosmic sage, a voracious reader, hopeless romantic, and brilliant philosopher. But above all, he endures as our era's greatest patron saint of reason and critical thinking, a master of the vital balance between skepticism and openness. In The Demon-Haunted World, Science as a Candle in the Dark, the same indispensable volume that gave us Sagan's timeless meditation on science and spirituality, which we've got to go into someday, published mere months before his death in 1996. Sagan shares his secret to upholding the rights of reason, even in the face of society's most shameless untruths and outrageous propaganda, which unfortunately there's no shortage of in
Especially now.
science. Right? What truth? And I think particularly medicine. But anyway, in a chapter titled The Fine Art of Baloney Detection, Sagan reflects on the many types of deception to which we are susceptible, from psychics to religious zealotry to paid product endorsements by scientists, which he held in especially low regard, noting that they betray contempt for the intelligence of their customers and introduce an insidious corruption of popular attitudes about scientific objectivity. Cue in, this is Maria's note, cue in PBS's Joe Hansen on how to read science news. But rather than preaching from the ivory tower of self-righteousness, Sagan approaches the subject from the most vulnerable of places. Having just lost both of his parents, he reflects on the all-too-human allure of promises of supernatural reunions in the afterlife, reminding us that falling for such fictions doesn't make us stupid or bad people, but simply means that we need to equip ourselves with the right tools against them. Well, I might beg to differ.
That's a
But-
very young picture of Sagan.
Yeah, but I think that was a very dogmatic statement anyway.
Yeah.
Because it's so unknown, we just don't know. Through their training, scientists are equipped with what Sagan calls a baloney detection kit, a set of cognitive tools and techniques that fortify the mind against penetration by falsehoods. The kit is brought out as a matter of course whenever new ideas are offered for consideration. If the new idea survives examination by the tools in our kit, we grant it warm, although tentative acceptance. If you're so inclined, if you don't want to buy baloney, even when it's reassuring to do so, there are precautions that can be taken. There's a tried and true consumer tested method. But the kit, Sagan argues, isn't merely a tool of science. Rather, it contains invaluable tools of healthy skepticism that apply just as elegantly and just as necessarily to everyday life. By adopting the kit, we can all shield ourselves against clueless guile and deliberate manipulation. Sagan shares 9 of these tools. You take a turn. I'm losing my breath.
Where possible, there must be an independent confirmation of the facts. Facts is in quotes. Encourage substantive debate on the evidence by knowledgeable proponents of all points of view. Arguments from authority carry little weight. Authorities have made mistakes in the past. They will do so again in the future. Perhaps a better way to say it is that in science, there are no authorities. At most, there are experts. Spin more than one hypothesis. If there's something to be explained, think of all the different ways in which it could be explained. Then think of tests by which you might systematically disprove each of the alternatives. And what survives is the hypothesis that resists disproof in this Darwinian selection among multiple working hypotheses has a much better chance of being the right answer than if you had simply run with the first idea that caught your fancy. Try not to get overly attached to a hypothesis just because it's yours. It's only a way station in the pursuit of knowledge. Ask yourself why you like the idea. Compare it fairly with the alternatives. See if you can find reasons for rejecting it. If you don't, others will. Quantify. If whatever it is you're explaining has some measure, some numerical quantity attached to it, you'll be much better able to discriminate among competing hypotheses. What is vague and qualitative is open to many explanations. Of course, there are truths to be sought in many qualitative issues we're obliged to confront, but finding them is more challenging. If there's a chain of argument, every link in the chain must work, including the premise, not just most of them. Occam's razor. This convenient rule of thumb urges us, when faced with two hypotheses that explain the data equally well, choose the simpler. Always ask whether the hypothesis can be, at least in principle, falsified. Propositions that are untestable, unfalsifiable, are not worth much. Consider the grand idea that our universe and everything in it is just an elementary particle, an electron, say, in a much bigger cosmos. But if we can never acquire information from outside our universe, is not the idea incapable of disproof? You must be able to check assertions out. Inveterate skeptics must be given the chance to follow your reasoning, to duplicate your experiments and see if they get the same results. So again, the full title of this class is Mysticism, where Science, Art, and Spirituality meet. So we go into this. So for example, for tonight, with Ron Cohen, Ron had incarnated many, many times. And in particular, he incarnated as Zarathustra, who was one of the chief disciples of the Buddha. So Ron said he spent time with the Buddha, and the Buddha said, I've spent enough time under my Bodhi tree, I've meditated, I really see how it all fits together, but it's really complicated. And so Ron said, can I just talk to you and start to write these things down? And what came out of that is the book in Buddhism called the Abhidhamma, which traces out what the Buddha saw and again, the hypotheses, the logic, the reasoning that goes with it. The thing that I like here, when Max Planck realized that physics would not work, or the same theories would not work on the microcosm, that there was a different set of rules there as opposed to the macrocosm that we live in. He came up with what is now called quantum theory, and for things being discrete, and quantum mechanics came out of that. He was asked, what was it like to have your theory accepted? How long did it take? And he answered, oh, it took one funeral at a time. He had to wait for each of these physicists to die. And we have a similar situation today in science, where it's now widely agreed that after 500 years of activity, what we call science has been studying 5% of the universe, and there's a remaining 95% that is called dark. This is not a minor screw up, okay? And what happened when I was going through graduate school, I remember there was this great surge of optimism among these physicists, because they had just come up with what's called the strong force, which is what binds the nuclei together. Normally in electromagnetism, opposites attract, and if you have the same charge, positive charge repels positive, negative charge repels negative. So the nucleus contains protons are all positively charged. So what in the world could hold them together? And the strong force is what does it. And at the same time, they discovered the weak force, which is where the neutrons in the nucleus split into a proton and an electron, and the nucleus then changes. It now has one more positive charge in it, and it becomes an isotope of whatever atom you're in. And so it was felt that we're on the verge of solving everything. And there was a theory at hand called string theory. Now we're here 50 years later, and string theory has two things to show for it. The first one is that no one's been able to write down a single equation for string theory. There are no equations, okay? And second of all, that there's only, in the ways of the world, this is a luxury to work on this. So there's only probably in the United States 30 to 50 faculty in physics at different universities that work full-time on string theory, okay? So one of the things they've been asked is to come up with experiments to show why string theory is true. And so they come up with experiments such as the following: restart the universe. Well, that's interesting.
How we do that?
How do you do that? Yes. And so forth. And the other thing that you'll find is that, but string theory is in fact correct. Ron Cowan confirmed that with observations of, for example, an electron, which is actually a set of vibrating strings, and inside, captured in the strings, is a little glob of energy. So you think of it as like a jelly almost, and it's vibrating like crazy. So the strings are really there, but that's because Ron observed them, okay? It's not because of any amazing experiment that was done by these string theorists. But the other thing that's happened, of course, is that science is a social process. And so you take a survey of university faculty and you say, what's most important, the truth or your reputation? You'll come up with 80% say my reputation. 20% will say the truth. Okay, that's a typical outcome you'll get out of these surveys. And so it's going to be very hard to, dislodge these string theorists. And these are the best and the brightest. These are not idiots by any stretch of the imagination. So with that, we'll now get out of this. See what.
It's still a dogma.
Went to MIT. But he's doing a good job of explaining.
And we're going to go to our talk on the Buddhas.
When are you
Just
gonna let
here.
Bruce talk?
Bruce, we're going to interactively work with Bruce on this. So just bear with me. Here we go.
White peppermint chocolate.
So we have a picture on the left of a smiling, happy Buddha.
Oh, happy.
Yeah, Bruce. Bruce? Just remind me, the thing on the right, this wheel that's here. What is that?
Well, that's the wheel of the Dharma. Basically, they talk about turning the wheel of Dharma when it comes to teachers. Turning the wheel of Dharma is helping people awaken. And there's a lot of very clear principles that go along with it that are very all laid out.
So that's what this class is all about. We're trying to awaken people. We'll see what sort of job we do.
Bruce, is that there's 8 of those points on that wheel. Does that go along with the Eightfold Path?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll come to that. So Buddhism, also known as Buddha Dharma and so forth, it's an Indian religion because the Buddha was a Hindu, but actually there's a huge amount now in China, Japan, Southeast Asia, all the countries there that are Buddhists, that every day practice Buddhism as part of their daily life. So all of these concepts originated in a movement in the 5th century BCE, and they gradually spread through much of Asia. The Silk Road goes actually over to what was the Roman Empire, and so it's spread along that. There are Buddhists all along that road. It's the world's 4th largest religion as you count these things. So it's really non-trivial, but there's I don't know 100+ sects to it, Bruce. To say Buddhism is monolithic, there are different varieties of Buddhism. For example, in Japan, there's Zen Buddhism.
Well, there's different.
So it goes.
Yeah, different skills and means have been developed in different areas of the world, but the fundamental principles are the same.
Right. Did we lose Patty?
She's coming right back.
There we go. Okay. So the Buddha's central teachings emphasize you attempt to attain liberation from dukkha, which is often translated as suffering or unease, and the source of which is said to be the attachment or clinging. So the Buddha endorsed the middle way, a path of development that avoids both extreme asceticism and hedonism. And the summary of this path is expressed in the Noble Eightfold Path, which is a cultivation of the mind said to lead to awakening and full liberation through observance of Buddhist ethics and meditation. There's other widely observed practices such as monasticism, taking refuge in the 3 jewels, which we'll come to, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and the cultivation of perfections or paramita. One of the things, Bruce, you've gone through years, decades of intense meditation and had some great teachers along the way. And so the main thing is realizing that the world around us is how would you frame that, your work to achieve enlightenment?
Well, the main key is developing awareness. Now, awareness is a meditation experience. It's not an outer experience. It's not one that's subject to experiments or something like that. It's awareness in your own mind. So as you do the practice and meditate, a lot of the preconceived ideas and the illusions that you have about this, that, and the other simply dissolve and disappear, and the mind develops a sharp, clear awareness that normally isn't the normal experience. But as that unfolds, well, the basic overview of liberation is basically being free of the self. The self is the part of the mind that thinks that it is separate. There's subject object. So when you have a self, you think that's reality, and everything is subject object. Now there is a self, which is the self or you, and other. But what you find out in meditation is that that's an illusion. In actual fact, it's the opposite. Everything is in union. There's no separation at all. So they talk about separation in terms of how can I talk? My words aren't coming to me very well because I don't have a good memory of these sort of things. But your subject object is a common description of having a self. So like my own experience, basically, I had an experience of where the self simply disappeared, and I was a bit basically returned to what they call my own natural mind, and the natural mind, by its own, has love and compassion everywhere. Everything is love and compassion actually is reality. It's like an instant rising in the mind, and is perfect all the time, and things like that. And along with that becomes, it was my own experience, is a vast intuitive understanding of the universe. It's just a kind of a thatness of what's really there. And the mind recognizes that in its own way. It just recognizes when it's real. That's why they call it natural mind. And basically, when you, you're liberated from duality, which is having a self, to not having a self, which is natural mind. And it changes everything everywhere. That's a fundamental principle of liberation. Now, they also say that everyone can become a Buddha. Now, the thing is that the Buddha was a very old soul, so he had vast wisdom that I don't have. So I'm on the path of unfolding deeper into realization. That's kind of the overview. And I mean, they talk about it. There's so much going on. One of the things I want to sort of bring up, which I usually don't talk about very much, is having a guru. Like that's the main thing that happened in my life. I had his name is Namgyal Rinpoche. Well, actually, it was Ananda Bodhi when I met him, and he got a Tibetan ordination. And he was already fully liberated. So he can communicate how to attain liberation because of his insight directly. And that was a major part of my life. So many details that could go into. The main one was that one of the fortunate things I'm born with is I was born with telepathic. Maybe it could be contributed to the fact that I had an identical twin brother and that our minds communicated with each other while we were in the womb. But basically, I can talk to somebody who else is telepathic, like talking on the telephone. We can talk about stuff, okay? And this Namgyal Rinpoche had that reality. And he came into my mind, and we talked about my own experience. But the biggest thing that I learned from him was that he had a realization of a vast, huge love mind. He had an incredible love, compassion that was kind of like extended to the whole universe. It's so huge. And I was able to see that in his mind, and he was able to show me. I found my own reality of love and compassion. That's sort of a description of how I found liberation. Now, the actual liberation was my own experience, and he didn't participate in that itself, but he was the background of how I got there. So Guru Yoga in Buddhism is very important, especially in Tibetan Buddhism. In other words, you have to have a teacher, a meditation teacher, who's already made the leap into liberation, because basically the areas of illusion and distortion in the mind go forever, and you can't. It's almost impossible to sort through them on your own without having a teacher who already has done it.
So that's great, Bruce. I just
I just want to ask something.
go ahead.
How much time over the years did you spend on retreat with him and a group of other students?
Yeah, you went on these heavy duty meditation retreats.
Well, I met him. I met him in 1966, and I had my liberation experience in 1994.
Wow.
So it's a long time. I mean, there's a lot of hard work. I mean, meditation is very difficult. I mean, this is one of the problems when you try and meditate, and what you find out is you can't focus. You can't. The mind is so filled up with all kinds of various phenomena that you can't find it. So, I mean, the classic meditation was for 55 minutes. And then you're supposed to spend 5 minutes reviewing the meditation. Well, when I first started, I was lucky to have 1 minute of clarity in that whole 55 minutes. All the rest of the time, I was fighting to find clarity. But eventually, you get to a place where clarity is natural mind, and the clarity never leaves. So it's a lot of hard work meditating.
Let me pick up on what Bruce is saying. I use words, but words, you know, they're metaphors. They give you images or pictures, but that's not really what's going on. What's really going on is much deeper. So the metaphor that I use is, you know, when you're actually caught up in day-to-day life, you should think of it as being in a movie. You're running around in this movie with all these other people. But in fact, when you achieve mindfulness, when you should think of it as now you've stepped out of the movie, you're out of the screen, you're sitting out in the audience, and you're looking at the screen and you're realizing, my gosh, look at all this other stuff around me that's really going on, okay? And so the science part of this that I worked with on Ron is we think we have 3 dimensions around us for space: up, down, right, left, back and forth. We actually have 24 dimensions, which gives you some idea of how much richer the space is around you. But you don't achieve that unless you put the time in on meditation to start to see that. And, you know, as to why there's 24 as opposed to 23 or 25, I don't know. I didn't make the rules up, but that's what it is. Okay. So let's plug ahead some more. This is a good dialogue, Bruce. Hold on a second.
I have a
Why
question
doesn't
for
this-
Bruce.
Yeah.
Since you were so connected with your brother, and even though he's transitioned, do you feel like you can still connect with him?
No longer, no. He's already gone on to a rebirth, and it doesn't relate to what happened in this lifetime at all.
Mhm.
So there's no continuing connection. But I did see, but I did, there's a period of afterlife. It's called the bardo, where the person dies and then is reborn. And that period lasts only about 3 or 4 days. I was able to talk to him telepathically when he was in the bardo. So I learned a lot about it from that experience.
Wow.
What could he share with you?
I mean, these are personal questions. I don't know if is that too personal?
No, I don't mind. I mean, God, I've had so many. Yeah. Anyway, no. The bardo is basically like when you die. First of all, you kind of wake up and you realize you've died, and that you're no longer in your body. That's kind of one of the first experiences. But there's some really important things I learned. One of the things my brother did have is that he did have some difficult karma. He was involved in a previous lifetime that involved killing. And one of the mechanisms in his mind, God, there's so much to talk about. Anyway, okay, let me go first to the basic concept of karma. Okay, in karma just means action. Okay, what happens is that when you have volition based on ignorance, it leaves a pattern in the mind in future lifetimes. Now, I'd like to give a classic example. I'm sure everyone has met somebody who is subject to rage. Their mind is always rage. The first thing they go to is rage and anger. And basically, that mechanism in the mind is created normally, in my experience that I've seen, is when somebody kills somebody in a rage. So what happens is that rage becomes a pattern for future lifetimes. And it's a kind of an obvious example. It's easy to follow, easy to understand. The subtle ones are not quite so easy to understand. So basically, with my own brother, my own twin brother, he was involved in killing, and his rationale for the killing is he thought he was superior to the people that were killed. Okay, so the mechanism that was left in his mind was that he thought he was superior to everyone. In other words, the conceit carried over into his next lifetime. So this is one of the difficulties, and he couldn't transcend it because he thought it was reality. He simply believed that he was superior to everyone. And so in the bardo, now this is the interesting part, in the bardo, he still had the conceit. There's a pattern in his mind, a mechanism. But in the bardo, he no longer had a self. So what happened was that in the bardo, this is after he died and everything, I was talking to him about, well, he was talking to me about heart mind, and he realized that I had realization of heart mind, and that he asked me to teach him heart mind. And I explained to him, actually, I don't have to teach you anything. All you have to do is find your own heart mind. And at which point, Namja Rinpoche appeared, a big grin on his face, and he says, I'll take over from here.
And Namgyal Rinpoche had passed on.
Huh?
He had passed on at that point.
Yeah,
Namgyal
he
Rinpoche.
died earlier. Yeah. Interesting, yeah. Anyway, so what happened is the next time I talked to my brother, the conceit had completely disappeared.
Huh.
And he was already very interested in his next lifetime. He saw what was coming. He was very inspired and very uplifted by where he was going towards. And and that's where he disappeared. He disappeared into his lifetime, and I haven't seen him since.
Wow.
Do you feel that he had a choice in where he was going next?
Well, this is what you have to look at is that when you look at the mind in those deeper ways, it's huge and it's been there forever. There's a deeper intelligence in everyone's mind that has been part of your unfoldment for thousands and thousands of lifetimes. So there's a deep wisdom of where they want to go and what they want to explore next. And so that's basically how it's decided. Now, the advantage of having a guru like Namj Rinpoche, he helps you find a suitable rebirth. But basically, the flow of the mind, the deeper unfoldment of the mind, comes from a deeper level of your own mind. And that's what was happening with him. Lots of clarity. I mean, the mind is vividly clear and understands things perfectly and instantly. It's, the clarity of a liberated mind is huge, and it's always perfect, and it always has things like, for example, when you have that level of clarity, you also have certainty that you know that your mind is correct. So it's very different from having a self. The self always is full of doubt. You're wondering about this, that, and the other, but all that disappears. But at the same time, you're still unfolding. You're on a path of deeper unfoldment. You're moving in the universe, helping others. Basically, compassion is reality. It arises in the mind perfectly all the time, and is instant. Like compassion is not something you decide to do. It's reality first. It already is compassion. Love and compassion are like the reality of non-duality. It's just there already. The other thing I just wanted to bring up was that in Buddhism, all sentient beings, including animals and insects, all will eventually become a Buddha. So what you have when it comes to the heart-mind realization, you have a connection with all beings. So in other words, in my heart-mind experience, I can connect to an insect or an animal and have a non-verbal dialogue about love. It's part of reality. It's like where the mind already is. It's not something separate. It's already there. The idea, the self thing, is an illusion. It doesn't exist at all. And that's what the realization is where the mind just simply drops all those negative understandings of so-called reality in the world, and you return to your own natural mind. That's kind of my main experience. Sorry, I'm kind of rattling on here.
Just
No,
to pick up on this, there's evidence that Jesus of Nazareth was raised in the school of the Essenes, which is the most mystic school of Judaism. And in particular, he through a quirk, he was able to travel. He traveled with his uncle Joseph of Arimathea over to Egypt, and he traveled out on the Silk Road to India, where he learned Buddhism, and he actually went to Tibet and so forth. And when he returned, when he was 30 years old, he started his preaching, but his preaching was very much to find the way. There was no notion of worship of him as an individual. It was for love and compassion for yourself and others, that everything is within you. So it's his take. Everyone has their own path toward achieving enlightenment, and this is the path that Jesus of Nazareth took. Ron had one other little quirk, which I've never seen anywhere. In his previous life, he was a woman. named Emmy Noether. Emmy Noether was one of the great mathematicians of the 20th century. When Einstein had problems with general relativity, he approached her and she explained to him that there wasn't any problem, that it was all okay, and don't worry about it, okay? Well, if Einstein couldn't figure it out, you tell me. So anyway, she was there incarnated with Ron. So we would have these three-way conversations with Emmy Noether. What's also crazy is when I was doing my doctoral dissertation, I did work in the area that Emmy Noether had developed on conservation laws in physics. And it was bizarre to me that I would run into Emmy Noether again, but it is as part of Ron. We'd have these conversations. He'd say, now she's asking you this, she's not asking me, she's asking you, what about this? So we'd have these conversations taking place, and that's just who he was. He was able to go back many, many lifetimes and see things that others couldn't. So now I'm gonna, you want to say anything?
I just wanted to ask Bruce if it's a fair summation to say that the guru's job is really to assist the student or the disciple in removing the obstacles to awareness and compassion. So it's not so much instruction in new ideas or new material as much as removing and uncovering what you're calling natural mind. It's removing the obstacles to that. That's my understanding.
Yeah, that's basically it. And there's a lot of good teachings of how to do that. Basically, Buddhism's on about like this is the kind of the classic understanding of the path to liberation. Like this is in Guru Yoga, the Tibetan teachings, is that basically they say you have to have a teacher who's already liberated, who can help you find your way through. And once you find your own natural mind, they say you've found your own inner guru.
Right.
And once you found your own inner guru, you don't need an outer guru anymore. In other words, you don't have to follow the teaching anymore. You're already free. So that's kind of the underlying thing, is that it's your liberation is already in your own mind. I like to think about it for a Western approach. Like everyone has had thousands of lifetimes. So part of your mind has the wisdom of those thousands of lifetimes. Mind you, you can't find it because it's all cluttered with various illusions, etc. But in actual fact, your deepest mind is that reality already. So all you're really doing in terms of Buddhism is simply returning to the reality of your own mind.
Bruce, is this concept of the mind similar to the Jungian concept of collective unconscious?
No, collective unconscious to me means that all the variations that you have in personalities and so on is already out there. But that isn't the overview of Buddhism. The overview of Buddhism is that you have natural mind. And basically, when you encounter other people who have natural mind, they're all different. Everyone's on a different path. So I don't see it as a collection. I see it as incredible, vast individualization. And they all have this incredible capacity to love and so on. Like in Buddhism, for example, they have deities that you meditate on. And you can connect to them, which I've been able to do. And they have a vast, huge heart mind totally different from anyone else, including myself. And they have a huge understanding of how to help other people to become free. So gods, your deities in the Buddhist world are just beings like yourself. And basically they're saying that eventually you can become a deity in your own right. It's not like a god in terms of the West. In the West, from the Middle East, you have a god who is separate from you, not part of your own mind, that has all these powers about your life and everything. That's non-existent in Buddhism. So
No,
yeah, anyway.
That's great. So the thing we've got up here is a lead in. Everyone really finds their own path, even though there's different schools and different interpretations of these paths and so forth. But at the end, you will achieve this heart mind, this loss of self. Here we just talked about two major branches of Buddhism, Theravada and Mahayana. So and to overstate this, because this does not do justice to these, the Theravada tradition emphasizes the attainment of Nirvana. So you go through these cycles of birth, death, rebirth, die again, samsara. But at some point you've done it enough, you've learned enough that you just stay in Nirvana. You stay there. Now, maybe that's true, maybe it isn't.
Well, not quite.
Go
Not
ahead.
quite true. Well, like I know two people who did not have enough difficult karma to develop a self. So they found their own natural mind on their own. Now, it took them a while to sort through family conditioning and views of society and all that when they were growing up. But eventually they find their own natural mind simply became normal. And they didn't have a self that had to be dissolved, because there wasn't enough karma to form one. So yeah, it's been my
That's
experience.
interesting.
I have a question. If somebody, let's say, has a life that is filled with trauma and chaos and disaster and all that, some people have said, and this is from a naive, because this is the first time I've ever had this kind of discussion. Some people say that that meant that their previous life, they had so much, it was easy for them and it was nothing. Is there a school of thought to that, or that the next one will be the opposite?
No, it doesn't work that way. The mind is actually fundamentally in its own right independent of suffering. There's a reality in your mind that's not subject to suffering. So basically you're returning to that level of your own mind. So yeah, a different view.
But Bruce, just to follow up, so with Ron, he would have, presumably reviewed either on his own or with others, how this past life worked out, and then said, well, we could work on that in this next life when you reincarnate. So you're always growing, always learning when you go through this. So
one of the elements that is hard to understand is the momentum. Like in Buddhism, they have this wheel of life, and at the top is a blind man that represents ignorance, and the next one is a potter's wheel. The potter's wheel represents the momentum behind that follows from volition based on ignorance. And the third one is consciousness, which is a house, a house or building with a monkey in it, and the monkey represents the self. So the consciousness or the self has a cause. So it's important to have that in mind, because as my teacher said a long time ago, that if it has a cause, then it has an end. So yeah.
Sure. Okay, the other major tradition cited here, and again, this is just a summary, the Mahayana, you're working toward the liberation of all beings, and there's many, many different ways to achieve this. There's different languages that this is in, and so forth. So let's just plug ahead here a little bit. The Theravada branch, typically you find it in Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Mahayana, in Nepal, Bhutan, China, Malaysia, Vietnam, Taiwan, Korea. And then there's also this body of teachings, the Vajrayana, which is attributed to these Indian adepts that might be viewed as a separate tradition within the Mahayana. There's Tibetan Buddhism, which is practiced in Mongolia and so forth, and so forth. So there's a lot of, it's not a monolithic entity, is the takeaway. There's a discussion here on the Buddha and his life. I'm going to skip over this so you can find that anywhere. He was moved. The Gautama was moved by the suffering, dukkha, of life and death, and its endless repetition due to rebirth. So he set out how to find liberation from suffering, which was called Nirvana. And he studied under two different teachers, learning how to meditate and learning philosophy. And again, we have these words: sphere of nothingness, sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. Words don't really do the job here. So finding these teachings to be insufficient, he went off on his own. He sat under this Bodhi tree and ended up awakening when he had this achievement of loss of self. And so now he started to attract followers, and they became monks. I said that Ron Cowan was this one monk, the Zarathustra, that was the one that put together the Abhidhamma, the writings. So there's 4 stages of awakening, 4 progressive stages. The Sotapanna, or the stream enterer, the Sakadagami, or the once returner, the Anagami, or the one who doesn't return, and Arahant. And so the oldest Buddhist texts portray Buddha as referring to people who are at one of these 4 stages as noble people, and the community of such people. And the teaching of these 4 stages of awakening still survives. Any comments on this, Bruce?
Yeah. Basically, the 4 stages are defined by the 10 fetters that you transcend. In stream entry, God, I'd have to look it up, but basically you transcend the gross illusions of.
I've got it later on.
Yeah. The 10 fetters? Oh, good.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Here we go.
Wonderful.
Just some of this, just.
So these are mental fetters, fetters or chains or bonds, okay? That shackle a sentient being, could be an ant, okay? Or a fish, to samsara and the cycles of lives. So we have belief in self, doubt or uncertainty, attachment to rites and rituals, sensual desire, ill will, lust for material existence, and lust for material rebirth, lust for immaterial existence, and lust for rebirth in a formless realm, conceit, restlessness, and ignorance, the 10 fetterers. Comments, Bruce?
Yeah, well, for example, the Arahat, which is the fourth one, the last three, conceit, restlessness, and ignorance, disappear all at the same time. And the other ones are, the stream entry, once returner, no returner. But the biggest one is the bottom one, which is ignorance. And this is where the mind sees what's actually really there. The mind isn't distracted by basically unwholesome conditioning. It's simply all those negatives that are normally in the mind when you have a self vanish completely, and you see reality as it actually is. So you have an intuitive grasp of what is real. It's quite vivid, lots of clarity, lots of certainty, that sort of thing.
Bruce, I'm wondering if you can address the apparent contradiction in the concept of karma and the concept of no self. If there's no self, how are we entrapped in the wheel of karma with that individual, fate, or I tend to see it as lessons that are necessary to learn. But who's doing that if it's not the self?
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, the natural mind is very different. It is huge, and has been there forever. Like, it's part of your mind that's been there forever. The self is a temporary phenomena that has conditioning, that has a cause, which is usually karma. Like the one example I gave, when somebody kills somebody, they have rage in the next lifetime. They don't remember at all that they killed somebody in their previous lifetime, but they have this rage in their rest of their life all the time. That's basically the self, and that's caused by karma. So the self has a cause.
But how is there karma if there's no self? How is there any responsibility?
Wait,
Say it again.
she's saying, that was this previous lifetime with this other body, but that you have the soul that is now reincarnated in a new body.
No, the soul is not reincarnated.
Right. No, go ahead.
The consciousness is. The consciousness never ends. It goes forever.
So does that quote unquote fate depend on the illusion of a self? If you dissolve that illusion, do you dissolve the repetition of the lessons and the karma? If you're not engaged in the notion of a self, does that liberate you from your apparent trajectory of karma?
Yeah, no, the karma has an end. I mean, basically, it's an illusion.
Right.
And it just simply disappears because you simply return to your own natural mind, which has been there all along.
So as long as you're not engaging that illusion, you're not, in a sense, engaging the illusion of karma. Is that,
Because I'm missing a bit here. Basically, karma is a temporary phenomena that happens in the mind that is an illusion.
right?
This is basically the Buddhist view of emptiness. It was never real to begin with. Basically, when you have experienced liberation, all the illusions and negatives disappear as if they never existed in the first place. That's actually what it's like. They simply disappear. Simply because when you turn to natural mind, your reality mind is what's been there all along.
And so you lose the illusion of the self and the illusion of the karma that goes with that.
Correct. Or it just disappears, actually.
Right.
Got it. Good.
Thank you.
Now we go into these Four Noble Truths. Hold on. We crave and cling to impermanent states and things, which is dukkha, which is incapable of satisfying and painful. So this keeps us caught in samsara, the endless cycle of repeated rebirth, dukkha, and dying again. But there is a way to liberation from this endless cycle to the state of nirvana, following the Noble Eightfold path. So the truth of dukkha is the basic insight that life in this mundane world, with its clinging and craving to impermanent states and things, is unsatisfactory. Dukkha can be translated as incapable of satisfying, or the unsatisfactory nature and general insecurity of all conditioned phenomena, or painful. It's the most commonly translated, though, as suffering. This is the Buddha allegedly said, "I just bring you suffering." But this is inaccurate, since it refers not to episodic suffering, but the intrinsically unsatisfactory nature of temporary states and things, including pleasant but temporary experiences. So we expect happiness from states and things which are impermanent and therefore cannot attain real happiness. Bruce, comments?
Okay. Basically, the hard part to understand is that what you think is real is an appearance. It's not actually reality at all, but you think it's real. And to have the experience where all that disappears, which is basically called liberation, then you have an understanding of what your mind really is already. It's kind of hard to explain because nobody actually experiences. Most people think what I'm talking about is not believable, basically. But when you have the experience, it's very vivid. But I'm just trying to explain that dukkha, or suffering, is fundamentally as a temporary phenomena of the mind that is an illusion. It's, that's what they're talking about.
All right, let's go ahead. I think this is good. So there apparently are three marks of existence. Dukkha is one of the three marks, along with impermanence and non-self. Okay, so we have suffering, impermanence, and non-self are the three marks of existence. So already you see words are no good. Like not non-self, we're talking about a mark of existence. Non-self.
Yeah, and
So
is just no self. Yeah.
Yeah. So everything is impermanent, but also there's no permanent self or soul. So the ignorance or misperception that anything is permanent or that there is self in any being is considered a wrong understanding and the primary source of suffering or dukkha.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, again, the problem is that we're dealing with here English, which by no means an imagination does the job. Samsara, wandering or world with the connotation of circuitous change. So it refers to the theory of rebirth and cyclicality of all life, matter, and existence. So samsara in Buddhism is considered to be pain, suffering, but perpetuated by desire and ignorance and the resulting karma. So the liberation from the cycle of existence, which is nirvana, has been the foundation and the most important historical justification of Buddhism. Buddhism rebirth can occur in 6 realms of existence: 3 good realms, heavenly, demigod, and human, and 3 evil realms, animal, hungry ghosts, and hellish, where samsara ends if a person attains nirvana, blowing out of the afflictions through insight into impermanence and non-self. Any comments, Bruce? This is by the way, this is the first time that evil has appeared in this discussion.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, in the Theravada Buddhism, for example, it's against the rules of order to be a teacher. It's against the rules of order to be a guru in the Theravada Buddhism. Whereas in Tibetan Buddhism, it's the most important element is to have a guru. So there's these different variations in the different schools of Buddhism. They have a tendency to say that everything is impermanent, but that's not entirely true. When you find the natural mind, in a sense, that's been there forever. So in a sense, you have to be able to say it's permanent. But that isn't actually what it's like when you get there. But so having words and trying to interpret what the Buddhist ideas are sometimes can get complicated. Like calling the 3 lower realms as evil was a kind of a misuse of the word evil. Evil has some very specific Western meanings that don't apply in Buddhism at all.
I'm glad that the animals aren't reduced to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but animals are loving. Animals can be very loving.
Oh, sure.
Like when you connect to their mind, there's lots of heart mind. Not always, but there is.
Sure. So let's take a look at rebirth. This is the process whereby beings go through a succession of lifetimes as one of many possible forms of life from birth to death. So the rebirth does not involve a soul or any fixed substance. The Buddhist doctrine rejects the concept of a permanent self or an unchanging eternal soul. And the Buddhist traditions traditionally disagreed on what it is in a person that is reborn, as well as how quickly the rebirth occurs after death. So some Buddhist traditions assert that no self doctrine means there is no enduring self, but there's an inexpressible personality which migrates from one life to the other.
That's sort of what I was asking.
The majority of Buddhist traditions, in contrast, assert that though evolving, a person's consciousness through
Though evolving.
though evolving, exists as a continuum and is the mechanistic basis of what undergoes the rebirth process. The quality of one's rebirth depends upon the merit or demerit gained by one's karma or actions, as well as that accrued on one's behalf by a family member. So Buddhism has a very complex cosmology. We're not going to go into that here to explain all these different things. Any comments, Bruce?
Yeah, I had one, now it's gone. I know, basically, consciousness is, well, being reborn as a human being, as into the human realm. I mean, it has its own problems, but basically, I remember what I was going to say now. The vow in the Tibetan Buddhism is, I vow to awaken quickly for the sake of all sentient beings. And where it really changes is when you meet somebody like my own teacher, who has been a teacher for thousands of lifetimes, and that's why he's reborn every lifetime, is to help others to liberation. And that's kind of the vow that is the Vajrayana path, is you vow to be reborn until all beings are liberated. That's the kind of what they call the Bodhisattva vow. And that's what, and when you get into that realm, like love and compassion is reality. That's what you do. You're doing. There's so many levels of the mind that are not involved in the human realm, normal human realm of consciousness, that you're involved in all the time, that you're helping beings at other levels of the mind all the time. That's kind of my main experience. So it's a lot more complex.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. Let's plug ahead. Karma drives samsara, the endless cycle of suffering and rebirth for each being. So good deeds and bad, unskillful deeds produce seeds in the unconscious receptacle that mature later, either in this life or in a subsequent rebirth. The existence of karma is a core belief in Buddhism, and it implies neither fatalism or that everything that happens to a person is caused by karma. In fact, this does not say that you don't have free will. That it does not say that at all. But you do have this karma that you have to work out.
Well, you don't have free will either.
Right. The more you look at free and will, the less there is of either.
Something like that.
A central aspect of karma is that intent matters and is essential to bring about the consequence or the result. But good or bad karma accumulates even if there's no physical action, and just having ill or good thoughts creates karmic seeds. So actions of body, speech, or mind all lead to karmic seeds. And in the Buddhist traditions, life aspects affected by the law of karma in the past and current births of a being, including the form of rebirth, the realm of rebirth, the social class, character, and major circumstances of a lifetime. So it operates like the laws of physics without external intervention on every being in all 6 realms of existence, including human beings and gods. The notable aspect is called merit transfer. A person accumulates merit not only through intentions and ethical living, but also being able to gain merit from others by exchanging goods and services, such as through charity to monks or nuns. So a person can transfer one's own good karma to living family members and ancestors.
But but the thing is karma is a temporary phenomena. It's not a permanent part of consciousness. It's basically an illusion.
Mhm.
So it's not quite like that.
No, I got you.
Something I've come to understand myself in my own life only in the past 10 years or so. And I've been practicing and studying since I was, well, let's say for about 50 years. That really, if you follow the teachings, there's not much we can do about karma. I've been taught the fastest way to transmute karma is to give, forgive, and serve. But notwithstanding that, the important thing is to try to come as close as you can to understanding your Dharma, which is, simplistically translated as your service. But it sure sounds like a self. and it sure sounds like it's something that's, kind of externally there as a track that you're, kind of bound to follow, I guess, until you realize it, until you see through the illusion of the cause and effect of karma. But I became so frustrated with even just with what was going on in my life. I must have been just a absolute pillaging Viking to have had the experiences I've had in this lifetime. But it just seems so pointless, because if I don't remember it, I can't apologize for it because I don't remember it. I have no connection to it. I don't relate to it at all. It just seems like this pointless, these tracks that marbles are rolling along. But if I think about Dharma and what I have the duty to learn and exactly how to serve, then that gives you something to work with. Otherwise, it does seem very fatalistic and just like, well, I'm stuck here. But if I'm looking at the Dharma as the most significant way to transmute the karma, in shorthand service, then there's just a really different emphasis.
Right.
In but again, there's no time, there's no self, and there's no time. How can there be karma? But if we're looking at the model of time, if we're looking at Dharma, that's the present as it affects the future. Because although I do think there are questions about it, commonsensically, you can't undo the past. But I think you can. I've done, exercises of going back to the past, and I swear it changed my present juncture and trajectory going forward from where I was when I went back to the past to address something in the past.
I'd like to point out something about karma. Like, in a sense, the main thrust of Buddhism is to transcend difficult karma. But I also want to point out that karma is not the main component of consciousness. Like, for example, love and compassion does not have a cause. Love and compassion does not come from karma. It's a reality of the mind that's been there forever. So I have sort of like a different, like they have a tendency to say that karma is everything. Well, in a sense, it is everything because it's the cause of suffering. Why so many people are in difficult places because of previous difficult karma. And that's what the teaching is all about. But consciousness itself is not run by karma. It's something else. Like love and compassion is not based on karma. It doesn't have a cause. I just wanted to make that one point.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good
That's a good point.
clarification. And so the karma really is an illusion that we don't have to submit to. If we're doing the other, the things I was taught was give, forgive, and serve. And so with particular attention to one's particular dharma, then you're moving, quote unquote, forward into the future, rather than just being like this click-clack ball affected by the illusion of the cause and effect of the karma. So it's kind of seems to me at this point that that's like the default mode
Mhm.
if you allow it to be. If you don't develop your consciousness and work on your dharma, that's the default that you fall back into, is that kind of reactive universe. Whereas so the liberation where you become a free agent is through saying, well, I don't have to do this because that's what my past was. I can do this now. And just opening up the field of possibility. For example, mental illness. Like, what about, I think so much of mental illness is somehow buying into that sense of cause and effect. Because what we see as mental illness, it's so prevalent in the West, and they just don't seem to have anywhere near the same degree of it in the East.
Well, the thing about mental illness, it's not necessarily caused by karma.
Right. No, I'm not saying it is. I'm saying it, I think it's created by almost by like believing in karma or agreeing to it.
There's one of the things I wanted to talk about. I kind of been thinking about, well, what I wanted to bring up when we're talking about Buddhism. And basically it goes back to the main principle of Buddhism is unfoldment of awareness. Awareness is where you see with your own mind what's really there. So there's kind of a when people who talk to one another about awareness, they talk about whether you see or not. Seeing is when you actually see reality as it actually is. Like, for example, the biggest one is love and compassion. It's like it's so vast and has so many levels to it, but it's seen in the mind. Actually, Bart has the best example of seeing. Seeing is what Ron, my brother, saw. When you see, in terms of meditation and your own mind, you actually look at what an electron is, or what it actually looks like. Now, just to point out that when you're looking at that level of the awareness, there's many levels of this. There's many things that flood into the mind about the nature of an atom. And of course, Bart was able to point out, well, look for this, look for that. So that's, in terms of awareness, it's called seeing. Okay. Now, seeing with the mind, what's really there, is very different from view. When you have a view of something, like, for example, if you look out in the at the sky, it's for sure that the sun moves around the earth. So that is view. It's not seen. It's a very important difference when it becomes an understanding of awareness. Awareness is seen, not view. Like take an important one, for example, in human conditioning, being judgmental of another person is an illusion. When you're making judgment of somebody else, it's always incomplete or completely wrong, simply because you're not seeing. You're not actually seeing what's really there. You're not looking at the nature of consciousness of that other human being. You're only have a view of that other person. So that's a critical difference between seeing and view. What's one of the problems in the Western way of thinking is that in the Middle East, there's something wrong with your mind because you're a born sinner. Whereas in Buddhism, your mind is already pure. It's a very important distinction between seeing and view. The view isn't never complete because you're not actually seeing what's really there. This kind of point I decided to bring up.
That's a good point, Bruce. It's right on.
And I would say where there's, a lot of judgment, it's always projection.
Always, by definition, projection, yeah. It's not seen. You're not seeing what's really there.
Right.
You're viewing.
Yeah. So we go to Nirvana. So when you end this cycle of rebirth, then the path that you've taken, takes you to Nirvana. There's a distinction here between right knowledge or insight and right liberation or release as the means to attain the sensation and liberation. Nirvana literally means a quenching or becoming extinguished. And this means ending the cycles of suffering in all of these different lives with rebirths and redeaths. And so it goes. The other thing is you have to realize that Nirvana is the state of not even wishing for Nirvana. It's at some point apparently this kicks in. You've lived enough. You've lived 10,395 lifetimes. That's enough. Okay. I have no idea what the gate is here. But anyway.
But notice it says it's the path of monastic life, that it's really monks and people who have chosen to move down that path, that most ordinary people are not able to experience the kind of meditation or live the way a monk has chosen to live. Is that?
Well, no, you can have the same realization. I mean, being a monk is just one of the paths, it's a path to liberation, but it's only one path. There are many other paths. In actual fact, everyone is on a path to liberation. Everyone experiences the path differently. That's why it helps to have a teacher who can actually tell right away. I mean, my teacher, he can look at somebody by how they walk, whether they're liberated or not. It's like it's a direct perception, intuitive knowing that's just part of his mind. Sure. He was awesome to have in your life because he was so inspiring. He knew exactly how to lift the mind and get inspired. about,
But Bruce, what Bart said is that you have experienced liberation or nirvana. Is that right?
yeah, I can
But yet
describe
you're
it.
still here with us.
Pardon?
You're still here with us.
That's his
He's on Zoom.
bodhisattva.
He can't get off Zoom.
Okay, okay,
The
basically,
bodhisattva is helping us.
yeah, the experience goes like this. It's called Find Your Old Builder. Basically, I found your old builder. You shall build no more. I'm no longer subject to becoming. Done is that which had to be done. I'm no longer subject to becoming. Basically, it's an experience where the self disappears. It's a in a sense you could call it a meditation experience. But in fact, what happened for me was I just woke up one morning and the self was no longer there. It felt normal, natural. Mind you, in hindsight, there is this incredible clarity, which I thought was normal and natural, and lots of certainty, which felt normal and natural. And that's basically the description of the liberation. The negatives simply disappear. And the classic way of describing it is that they disappear as if they never existed in the first place. In other words, I cannot remember what it was like to have a self because it's gone. It's no longer there. Kind of odd, but there it is.
So Patty, Bruce lives in Toronto and it gets to be pretty nippy there. So he walks in the mall to get his exercise because it's warm. And he runs into other people that are enlightened, that have no self. They're there too. It's
Not
not
very
just
often, but yeah,
not very often, no.
yeah. Well, basically, you can experience, I can experience another person's mind that is on the path, and somewhere or another in a previous life. For example, they've had the attainment of stream entry, which means the mind is decided to move to liberation. And there's people, I encounter consciousness like that all the time, and I could connect to those people telepathically. And yeah, that's just how it works.
Yeah. So let's skip ahead here. This is the Buddhist theory to explain nature and the relations of being, becoming, existence, and ultimate reality. Buddhism asserts there's nothing independent except the state of nirvana, and all physical and mental states depend upon and arise from other pre-existing states, and in turn from them arise other dependent states while they cease. So there's this constant evolution or churning of everything. There's no anything fixed here.
One more interruption. Don't forget to put the car in the garage.
Buddhist thought does not understand causality, rather it understands it as a condition arising of some sort, dependent upon conditions created by a plurality of causes. So it's they view it as much more complicated than Newton did, and it really, because if you look at what Einstein did for general relativity, which is the generalization of what Newton did, it is far more complicated, and the evolution of it is incredibly complicated. So, again, they were onto something here, I think.
Well, one of the conditions of being a human being is that before 2 years old, you actually are able to be in touch with your own heart mind. But normally before 2 years old, you find out from your parents that they actually don't love you for who you really are, simply because they can't see you. So in a sense, that's kind of the beginning of duality. Like
and trauma, suffering,
yeah,
you're-
yeah, you have to become the person that they love to get their love. But it's
Right.
not you anymore. It's anyway, something like that. Yeah. It's one of the problems with being born a human being.
Right, right. These 12 links or nidanas, ignorance exists, the karmic formations exist, and therefore consciousness exists, and so it goes. All of these links to our senses, to feelings, to cravings, to grasping, to becoming, to birth, to old age, etc. So liberations from these cycles of birth, of rebirth, and suffering can be attained.
I'd like to bring up
Go ahead.
like one of the things when you talk to Buddhism, including my own teacher, they talk about all these technical terms from Sanskrit and Pali. Pali was the original language of the Buddha. Sanskrit is how it's all recorded in scriptures in India. They talk about all these different concepts and ideas. One of my recent teachers, Pekcho Rinpoche, wrote this book while him and another co-author who had much better grasp of English than he did, wrote this book of all the stages of liberation that you have to go through. And I just wanted to mention that because for the Western mind, to understand Buddhism, it's really hard to go back to learn the language of Sanskrit and Pali and trying to figure out what that meant when you have somebody who actually explains it in terms of modern psychology and English, all the stages that you have to go through to be liberated. So I just wanted to mention this book. It's a book called Awakening Dignity.
Right.
Can you see that? Just better
Yeah.
turn off this here.
Yeah, it's in our syllabus, but it's a great book. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to want to show this title.
I'll dig it out and put it in when I distribute the recording, Bruce, I'll put it there. Okay.
Okay. All right. I just wanted yeah, okay. All right. I mean it's an important book because for the Westerner it's very hard to follow all the teaching that comes from Sanskrit. And if you want it really understood in terms of modern English, this is where you got to go.
Right, right. Yeah, and the author, you know, let's see, your mentor was Namshal Rinpoche,
Yeah, my guru is Namgyal Rinpoche, right?
and this guy who wrote this, he's what's his name? The Buddhist
Oh,
for the book.
oops, just a minute, I lost something here. Whoop.
Who the author for the book.
Yeah, now I got this turned off.
Yeah, what's
It's
what's
Pekchok Rinpoche. Phak.
Petra, right,
Pekchok Rinpoche.
right. So and Rinpoche is the honorific, meaning precious one.
For all teachers.
Yeah, for all teachers. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why you run into all these Rinpoches. You wonder what's going on. So family, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll include that. I'm just skipping through the 3 jewels. Let's see. A Buddha is someone who's become awake through their own efforts and insights. I don't see anything here. There's the cosmology, which is quite complicated. I think we'll skip over that. Here we come to Dharma. That's what I was looking for, because I knew it was here. This includes all of these ideas we're talking about. The teaching reflects the true nature of reality, but it is not a belief to be clung to, but a pragmatic teaching to be put into practice, like into a raft, which is for crossing over to Nirvana, not for holding on to. So it refers to the universal law and cosmic order, which that teaching both reveals and relies upon, Dharma. The ultimate truth and reality, so it's the way that things really are. That's what we don't know today. Then we have the 3rd jewel, Sangha, which is this community of monks.
It's
that
spelled,
Patty-
it's Sangha.
Sangha,
Sangha.
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 Yeah, and also at the bottom, there's this separate definition, those who've attained any stage of awakening, whether or not they're monks. So there's this noble Sangha. I ran into some people of that ilk. But these people preserve and pass down the Dharma of the Buddha. And without this, there is no Buddhism. So, the different paths to liberation, 7 lists here. There's no shortage of these things. There's a middle way.
They love their lists.
Yeah, there's 7, 10, 3, whatever number you want. They're out there.
A lot of 8s.
The Buddha's first sermon, when he presented the Eightfold Path as the middle way, and so forth. So we end up with this Eightfold Path, which really doesn't do a lot for you, I don't think. Maybe it does, but you're reading this and you're wondering what happened to left, and so forth. So this is the 4th of the 4 Noble Truths. But anyway, to be able to do this is a lot of work, a lot of hard work. And then these 5 precepts that you undertake. I undertake to abstain from onslaught of unbreathing beings. I undertake to abstain from taking what is not given. I undertake to abstain from misconduct concerning sense pleasures. I undertake false speech, abstain from false speech. I undertake to abstain from alcoholic drink or drugs. So there we have,
There's
one. Go ahead.
There's a very important thing about the 5 precepts is you can't really meditate if you don't follow the 5 precepts. You can't go into the deeper levels of your own mind if you're lying to people all the time, or if you're causing, yeah. So the 5 precepts are very important to practice if you want to get serious about meditating.
Right.
I've had periods in my life of drinking wine and using sugar, that is the real problem for me. And I think of alcohol as the sugar and not. And I know there's just really no comparison.
Yeah.
I've been without wine for what, it's going on 3 years now.
Yeah.
And the clarity is just such a, I mean, sometimes it means seeing things I'd rather not see, that's for sure. But it's just such a boon, it's such a benefit that there's no comparison to, I think I was drinking wine really as a way of coping with my stress, that the stress is still there, but I'm shifting my relationship to it on a different level. You know, and I'm dealing with the illness now, maybe instead, which is maybe another way of doing the same thing, but there's just no comparison. The clarity is such a gift.
The four Brahma Viharas are in very important practice.
They're loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity.
Yeah.
You know, those are great things to aspire toward.
Well, what the prayer goes at, I wish all beings to have loving kindness. I wish all beings to have compassion, and so on. It's an important prayer
Metta prayer, yeah.
in
Yeah.
Buddhism, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. We have Pali or wisdom and avidya or ignorance, misunderstanding, misperception of the nature of reality, and overcoming this is part of the path of awakening. So, and then devotion, you know, which, you know, this is what I said, the Chinese, it would not be uncommon for them to have practiced Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism every day. So every day, just as part of their life, in their home, wherever, they would be doing something here, some type of meditation, something. It's just an integral part of life, which says something. So there we go. We have hit the 9 o'clock mark, and we have this. Is Pam still there? Did she leave? Oh, there she is.
You guys made it to the
Any
end.
questions from the peanut gallery? You're muted. Patty, you're muted.
She's looking for the thing, she can't find it.
Oh, let me see if I can unmute you.
Got
Okay.
it. I
Okay.
had to go out and in. No, she was downloading the book
No.
on Audible.
I downloaded that book on Audible. I'm gonna listen to it. And ironically, as I'm listening to this and going, how much I need to work on it, I get an alert on my credit card that Budget Rent-A-Car charged me 3 times the amount in Puerto Rico on my vacation. So now I'm like going, he's saying, I don't feel anything. I have no stresses, no
No.
anything. And I'm thinking about all the stresses that I have. So I got a lot to do. I got a lot to work on.
No, but the Buddha was a wonderful teacher, and we were lucky to have the Buddha, and you know, and then Jesus, who also was enlightened clearly, and he followed a different path, but he still did it.
Well, Buddhists don't think Buddhism is a religion. They think it's just a way of life.
Right. Yeah, that's what I think Jesus thought. He just felt there was a path, a way, and all of that got lost.
Yeah.
What we call Christianity.
Yeah, Christianity makes it easier. You just need to believe that Jesus came and we are all forgiven and there is salvation. So just believe.
Yeah, but it's still going to require, prayer, meditation to really achieve that. You've
Yeah.
got your own karma and dharma.
I think the real key for me, the two things I look for when I'm, looking for a teacher or, fellow travelers is the combination of awareness and compassion. It's got to be both. And I think there's some people who could be very profound thinkers, but really lacking in compassion.
Mhm.
And then there are other people whose compassion is, infinite, wonderful, but sometimes it's very unwise. It's not adjudicated, sometimes I think it's harmful to even the recipient of the compassion, depending on the way the form it takes, but it's that balance of, there's this fine line between, surrender and intention, and another fine line between, for me, between compassion and consciousness.
Yeah. So, Pam, if you want to get any of these, they're all on youtube.com/BartStuck. So you can subscribe to that and you'll see what you've been missing. And we'll add this one to it.
And we do
Well,
all
thank you for
kinds
letting
of
me
things.
join.
Oh,
Thank you for
it's
coming.
Very nice to have you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for the questions.
Thank you for sticking it out. We didn't know if you guys would. You survived.
Yeah.
You're still awake.
Right.
I'm starting to doze a little, but that's just because I'm tired from
Thank-
travel. Thank you so much.
Well, welcome to Connecticut.
Okay, we'll
Thank
see
you.
everybody next week.
Have a great time.
Okay, have a good.
Same
Bye-bye.
back channel, same back time.
Thank
next
you,
week.
Bruce, for all the help.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
Bruce.
It was
Great.
great, Bruce. Thank you. Bye-bye.